Welcome to the Cinematic Explainer brought to you by Fulwala Tuitions, where we turn textbook chapters into unforgettable visual journeys. Okay, look at that beautifully crafted Indian Shehnai resting right there in those golden sun rays. That is exactly what we are going to explore today. We're unpacking a massive story of music, history, and just sheer unbreakable dedication to a craft. So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover his journey from the Pungi to the Shehnai, his early life and training, how the river Ganga inspired him, his global triumphs, and finally his deep devotion to his motherland. Let's dive right in. All right, part 1. From Pungi to Shehnai, the birth of a melody. Picture this. We're back in the Mughal era, and Emperor Aurangzeb actually flat-out bans the instrument you see on the left, the Pungi. It had this shrill, incredibly unpleasant sound that just drove everyone crazy. But then, a professional barber who actually hailed from a family of musicians decided to fix it. He took a natural hollow stem that was longer and broader than the pungi, pierced 7 holes into it, and figured out how to play it by opening and closing those holes. And the result? A deeply, soft, melodious sound that eventually won over the royal courts. Now, you might be wondering, how do you even name a completely new instrument? Because it's definitely not a pungi anymore, right? It sounded beautiful and looked totally different. It needed a brand new identity. The logic they used was actually brilliant. The instrument was first played in the emperor's or the shah's chambers, and it was invented by a barber, which in Hindi is called a nai. You put those together and boom, the Shehnai was born. Thanks to its beautifully sweet sound, it quickly became this auspicious staple, heavily played in North Indian weddings and temples. But it really wasn't considered a classical stage instrument, well, until one man changed everything. Which brings us to Section 2, Early Life and Training, a prodigy in the making. Ustad Bismillah Khan was born in 1916 in Dumran, Bihar. Now, he came from a very well-known family of musicians, but his own beginnings were incredibly humble. Get this. As a little boy, he would head over to the local Bihar temple to sing the traditional Bhojpuri chaita. And his ultimate reward for this? A massive 1.25 kilogram ladu, hand-delivered by the local Maharaja, literally singing his absolute heart out just to earn a giant sweet. The real turning point, though, came early. When he moved to Benares, which we know today as Varanasi, at just 3 years old, his destiny was completely sealed. He became absolutely fascinated by his maternal uncle, Ali Bux. Ali Bux was the official Shehnai player at the local Vishnu temple. Young Bismillah would just sit there, totally captivated, watching his uncle play for hours on end, absorbing every single note like a sponge. Moving on to Section 3, Inspiration by the Ganga, Solitude and Symphony. To really master his craft, the young apprentice needed to escape the crowds. He actively sought out these quiet, peaceful environments to practice in deep solitude. He'd go to the temple of Balaji, the temple of Mangalamaya, but his ultimate sanctuary, the peaceful, flowing banks of the holy river Ganga. And the flowing waters of the Ganga didn't just calm him down, they actively inspired him. Just watching the river, he began to invent and improvise these incredibly complex new ragas, musical frameworks that the rest of the world previously thought were absolutely impossible to play on a shehnai. He basically proved that the instrument's musical range was limitless. It's kind of a brilliant 3-step formula when you look at it. First, you master the traditional tunes. Second, you deeply observe the flowing nature of the Ganga. And third, you bravely improvise and invent. That simple but profound process is exactly how he dragged the Shehnai from background temple noise all the way to the classical center stage. Okay, let's look at Section 4, Independence and Global Triumphs, a Nation's Voice. Let's pull up our holographic timeline here. 1938 is his big break with the opening of All India Radio in Lucknow, where he quickly becomes the most frequently heard Shehnai player out there. But in 1947, that is the history maker. On August 15th, Ustad Bismillah Khan becomes the very first Indian to musically greet the newly independent nation. He's right there at the Red Fort, pouring his soul into rock coffee for an audience that actually included Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, right before Nehru delivered his famous Tryst with Destiny speech. Just incredible. And from that national stage, the guy goes totally global. His first trip abroad is to Afghanistan, where King Zahir Shah is so moved by the performance that he gives him priceless Persian carpets. He becomes the first Indian invited to perform at the prestigious Lincoln Center Hall in the US. He even gets an auditorium named after him in Tehran. And here's a fun fact. He briefly dipped his toes into the film industry, composing hit music for 2 films, but then he just walked away. He famously turned his back on it because he felt the artificial glamour of the cinema world was fundamentally incompatible with his pure devotion to music. That kind of unmatched, stubborn dedication really paid off. He earned India's top 4 civilian awards. We're talking the Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, and ultimately in 2001, the Bharat Ratna, India's absolute highest civilian honor. And you know what his message was when he accepted it? He just urged every parent to teach your children music, calling it India's richest heritage. This leads us perfectly into our final chapter, Section 5, Devotion to the Motherland. Roots over riches. So, despite having immense international wealth, fame, and acclaim, his heart literally never left home. There's this amazing anecdote where an eager American student begged Khan Sahib to head up a Shehnai school in the USA. The student, knowing how much he loved his hometown, actually promised to build exact replicas of the Benares temples right there in America to make him feel at home. Bismillah Khan's response was unforgettable. He just looked at his student and asked, "Can you transport River Ganga as well?" Wow. That quote captures his soul perfectly. He knew you could build replica buildings and artificial temples all day long, but you could never transport the sacred flowing water of the Ganga. You just couldn't replicate the true, living essence of his homeland. If we look at the core values pulsing through his life, a few things become incredibly clear. You've got this deep patriotism and love for India, an ultimate simplicity and pure dedication to his art over any sort of commercial success. A firm belief that music is a universal language that completely bypasses all religious barriers. And above all, an unbreakable, lifelong bond with his roots in Durmaron and Benares. So, as we wrap up this explainer and take one last look at that beautifully crafted Shehnai resting in the golden sun rays, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Ustad Bismillah Khan reached the absolute pinnacle of global success, but he never, ever let go of his roots. In our rapidly moving, hyper-connected modern world, what is the Ganga that grounds you? What is that one authentic thing you refuse to leave behind? Think about that. Thank you for joining us on this visual journey with Fulwala Tuitions. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.